The Ferengi ambassador sneered as he ridiculed human ships as rusty tin cans barely fit for scrap metal, his words full of scorn. Lieutenant Commander Jacob Sullivan clenched his jaw as the only human in the Galactic Council chamber. He forced himself to remain silent, even as the Ferengi's comments drew quiet laughter from the other alien dignitaries. It was the year 2257, and humanity had only recently achieved interstellar travel capability, lagging behind the advanced spacefaring races of the Council. Earth's first primitive ships, while an immense source of pride for humans, appeared woefully unimpressive next to the sleek vessels of the Ferengi and their allies. But Sullivan knew a secret that would wipe the smug look from Ambassador Taurus's gray face. For decades, Earth had been quietly developing a classified fleet of highly advanced Olympus-class warships in hidden deep space facilities, ships that could outgun and outmaneuver anything the aliens had. Humanity's primitive spacefaring was a carefully orchestrated ruse. As the Council session ended, the assembled aliens moved to restrict humanity's access to key star systems and resources, constraining Earth's growth. Sullivan realized Earth's future was at stake. They needed room to expand, or their civilization would stagnate and wither. Covertly tapping out an encrypted subspace communication, Sullivan delivered an urgent message to the Global Defense Council back on Earth. Negotiations failing, Ferengi maneuvering against us. Recommend revealing Olympus fleet as deterrent. It was a risky play, but Sullivan saw no other option. Far away on Earth, Admiral Graves read the message with a grim smile. As Supreme Commander of the Olympus program, he had overseen the development of humanity's secret weapons. "It's time," Graves announced to his staff. "Signal the fleet. Set course for the Citadel. We'll show them what human ingenuity and determination can achieve." In the cold depths of space, powerful engines flared to life as the Olympus battlecruisers and their escort ships accelerated towards the Citadel. Unaware of the approaching human armada, the Ferengi and Galactic Council continued to mock Earth's backwards technology. They would soon learn just how wrong they were. As the Olympus fleet prepared to shock the galaxy, the future of humanity's role in the cosmos hung in the balance. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan steeled himself for a final confrontation with the arrogant Ferengi ambassador, one that would alter Earth's destiny forever. No one would call human ships primitive again. The alien dignitaries murmured amongst themselves, their whispers growing louder as an aide rushed into the chamber and handed Taurus a datapad. The Ferengi ambassador's eyes widened as he read the urgent message. "The humans have called for an emergency meeting of the Council," Taurus announced, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and concern. "It seems they have something important to share with us." Sullivan strode into the council chamber, his uniform crisp and his steps purposeful. He stood tall before the assembled delegates, his gaze settling on Taurus. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Sullivan began, his voice clear and steady. "I come before you today to make a critical announcement regarding Earth's spacefaring capabilities." As if on cue, the chamber's panoramic windows suddenly filled with the sight of massive angular battlecruisers dropping out of hyperspace near the Citadel. The Olympus fleet had arrived, their sleek hulls gleaming in the starlight. The council members gasped and muttered in shock as they took in the imposing vessels, realizing that they dwarfed the ships of every other race present. "As you can see," Sullivan continued, gesturing towards the windows, "humanity has been developing a secret fleet of advanced warships capable of defending our interests across the galaxy. The Olympus-class ships incorporate cutting-edge propulsion, energy weapons, and defensive systems that surpass anything the Council races currently possess." Taurus, visibly shaken, rose from his seat. "How did you manage to construct such a fleet without our knowledge?" he demanded, his voice trembling slightly. Sullivan met Taurus's gaze unflinchingly. "Earth's greatest minds have been working tirelessly for decades, driven by the need to secure our place among the stars," he explained. "We have no desire for conflict, Ambassador Taurus, but we will not tolerate being marginalized or contained by the Council." To further demonstrate the Olympus fleet's capabilities, Sullivan tapped a command into his wrist communicator. Outside the Citadel, The battlecruisers swiftly maneuvered into formation, their movements precise and synchronized. In a dazzling display of firepower, the ships unleashed a barrage of energy weapons on a nearby asteroid field, reducing the massive rocks to dust within seconds. The council members watched in stunned silence as the human ships effortlessly outclassed their own forces. Faced with this undeniable show of strength, Taurus and the other delegates had no choice but to reevaluate their stance on humanity's role in the galactic community. Sullivan seized the opportunity to propose a new era of cooperation, with Earth as an equal partner in galactic affairs. In exchange for fair access to resources and territories, he offered, we are willing to share select advancements in human technology with the Council races. After a tense deliberation, Taurus and the Council grudgingly agreed to negotiate new terms for humanity's place in the galaxy. As the meeting adjourned, Sullivan knew that this was only the beginning of a long and challenging process. Earth would need to remain vigilant and continue asserting its interests, backed by the formidable presence of the Olympus fleet. News of the secret fleet's revelation spread like wildfire across human space, sparking celebrations and renewed hope among Earth's citizens. The Global Defense Council, bolstered by the success of Admiral Graves and his team, prepared for a new chapter in human expansion and exploration. Back on the Citadel, Sullivan returned to his quarters, his mind racing with the implications of the day's events. Integrating humanity into the galactic stage would be a complex and delicate process, and he knew that rivalries with the Ferengi and other races were just getting started. But with the Olympus fleet as a powerful bargaining chip and a symbol of human ingenuity, Earth now had a fighting chance to forge its own destiny among the stars. Sullivan sat across from Taurus in the dimly lit conference room, the tension palpable as they hammered out the details of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Taurus's gray skin glistened with sweat as he reluctantly agreed to each concession. Fine, humans will have access to the Centauri mining colonies, Taurus grumbled, tapping his datapad. But don't think this makes us friends. Sullivan nodded, keeping his face neutral. We're not looking for friendship, Ambassador, just fair treatment. As the negotiations wrapped up, Sullivan couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease. The Ferengi had folded too easily. He tapped his wrist communicator, contacting his intelligence chief. Keep eyes on all Ferengi activity. Something's not right. Days later, Sullivan pored over reports in his office when an urgent alert flashed across his screen. Grainy footage showed Ferengi warships amassing near the Orion Nebula. He immediately contacted Admiral Graves. Sir, we have a situation, Sullivan said, transmitting the intel. Admiral Zaxxon is mobilizing a fleet. Our colonies could be in danger. Graves's holographic image flickered as he reviewed the data. Understood, Commander. I'm authorizing deployment of the Olympus fleet to our border systems. Be ready for anything. The next week saw a series of brutal hit-and-run attacks. Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching as another distress call came in. Ferengi ships decloaking off Proxima Centauri, the comms officer shouted. They're targeting the outpost. All ships engage, Sullivan ordered. The Titan's engines roared to life as they moved to intercept. Laser fire lit up space as human and Ferengi ships clashed. The Titan rocked from a direct hit, but its advanced shields held. Sullivan gripped his command chair as they returned fire, their energy cannons tearing through a Ferengi cruiser's hull. As the battle raged, Sullivan's personal communicator chirped. An encrypted message scrolled across the screen. Human Commander, I have information that could end this war. Meet me on Rigel 7 in 3 cycles. Come alone. Raxer. Sullivan's mind raced. A Ferengi defector. It could be a trap, but they needed any edge they could get. He made the decision to go, knowing the risks. But before he could slip away to meet Raxer, alarms blared throughout the Titan. Multiple ships dropping out of warp, the tactical officer yelled. It's a full-scale Ferengi assault on the Citadel. Sullivan watched in horror as hundreds of Ferengi warships materialized around the massive space station, their weapons already firing. The Citadel's shields flared under the barrage. Get me a secure channel to the Citadel now, Sullivan ordered. After a tense moment, Ambassador Torres's panicked face appeared on screen. "Sullivan, we're under attack. Our defenses can't hold much longer." "Hold on, Ambassador," Sullivan said, his mind already formulating a plan. "I'm coming for you." Sullivan gathered a team of his best operatives, boarding a stealth shuttle as the Titan engaged the Ferengi fleet. They weaved through the chaos of battle, dodging debris and weapons fire as they approached the Citadel's docking bay. "Breaching teams prepare for close-quarters combat," Sullivan instructed as they touched down. The shuttle's doors hissed open and they charged into the fray. The corridors of the Citadel were a war zone. Sullivan and his team fought their way through waves of Ferengi boarders, their advanced weaponry giving them an edge. They reached Torres's quarters to find the ambassador cornered by Ferengi soldiers. Sullivan's team made short work of the attackers. Torres looked up at them, his eyes wide. "Sullivan? You came for me?" "We're getting you out of here, Ambassador," Sullivan said, helping Torres to his feet. "But first, we need your help to coordinate a counterattack." As they made their way to the Citadel's command center, Sullivan's communicator lit up with welcome news. "This is Admiral Graves. The Olympus fleet has arrived in force. We're engaging the enemy now." Sullivan allowed himself a grim smile. The tide was about to turn. Sullivan stood at the viewport of the Citadel, watching as the last of the Ferengi ships retreated into hyperspace. The battle was over, but he knew the real challenges were just beginning. "Ambassador Sullivan, the Council is ready for you," a voice called from behind him. Sullivan turned, straightening his uniform. "Thank you. Let's not keep them waiting." The council chamber buzzed with tension as Sullivan took his seat. Torres sat nearby, looking worse for wear, but alive. The Klingon representative, Kava, glared at Sullivan from across the room. "This emergency session will come to order," the council speaker announced. "We are here to discuss Earth's new role in galactic affairs following the defeat of Admiral Zaxxon's insurrection." Kava smacked his head on the table. "New role? The humans have overstepped their bounds. They expand unchecked, seizing systems that do not belong to them." Sullivan leaned forward. "Earth has claimed no territories outside those granted by existing treaties. We seek only to secure our place among the stars, as is our right." The debate raged for hours. Sullivan fought to keep his cool as accusations flew. Finally, a recess was called. In the hallway, Torres pulled Sullivan aside. "We have a problem," the Ferengi whispered. "My sources tell me there's a price on my head. The hardliners want me dead for siding with you." Sullivan's eyes narrowed. "I won't let that happen. I'm assigning a security detail to you immediately." As Sullivan tapped out orders on his communicator, an alert flashed across the screen. It was a priority message from Admiral Graves. "Sullivan, we've got trouble. The Klingons are massing ships along our border. They're calling it a defensive exercise, but our intel suggests otherwise. I'm deploying the Olympus fleet to reinforce our positions." Sullivan's mind raced. The Klingons were preparing for war, and Earth wasn't ready. He needed more information, fast. That night, Sullivan met with his most trusted operatives in a secure room deep within the Citadel. "I need eyes and ears inside Klingon space," he told them. "Find out what they're planning, and do it quietly." As the team prepared to depart, Sullivan's communicator chirped again. An encrypted message scrolled across the screen. "Human, we have information vital to your survival. Klingon High Command plans total war against Earth. We oppose this madness. Meet us on neutral ground. Come alone or not at all. The future of both our peoples hangs in the balance." Sullivan stared at the message, weighing his options. It could be a trap, but if it wasn't, he made his decision and began plotting a course to the meeting point. As Sullivan's shuttle detached from the Citadel, he watched the Olympus fleet assembling in the distance. He knew that in the coming days, the fate of humanity would be decided, one way or another. Sullivan's boots echoed through the dimly lit maintenance tunnels of the Citadel. Torres shuffled behind him, flanked by a mix of human and Ferengi guards. The air hung thick with tension as they navigated the labyrinthine passages. "Are you sure about this, Sullivan?" Torres whispered, his breath hot on Sullivan's neck. Sullivan didn't break stride. We need that intel, Ambassador. It's worth the risk. They reached a nondescript hatch. Sullivan punched in a code, and the door hissed open. Inside, a hulking figure stood silhouetted against the faint emergency lighting. General Krev's eyes glinted as he assessed the newcomers. You came. Good. Sullivan stepped forward, hand hovering near his sidearm. Let's skip the pleasantries, General. What do you have for us? Krev's gravelly voice filled the chamber. My faction within the High Command grows weary of this dishonorable warmongering. We offer you the key to thwarting their plans. The Klingon produced a data crystal, its facets catching what little light there was. Everything you need to know about our offensive capabilities, troop movements, strategic targets. But my price is non-negotiable. Safe passage and sanctuary for my people. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. That's a tall order, General. How do I know this isn't an elaborate trap? Taurus cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise? Temporary refuge on one of our secure colonies while we verify the intel? Sullivan considered this, watching Krev's face for any sign of deception. Finally, he nodded. Agreed. But if this information proves false, all bets are off. Crave handed over the crystal. Then we have an accord. Within hours, Admiral Graves's analysts were poring over the decrypted data. Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching tactical displays light up with new information. Sir, a young lieutenant called out, we're detecting multiple Klingon scout ships along our border. They match the signatures provided in General Krev's intel. Sullivan leaned forward. Neutralize them, quietly. Across the sector, human ships moved with surgical precision, disabling the Klingon scouts before they could report back. As the main Klingon fleet advanced, they found themselves facing a wall of human warships, perfectly positioned to counter their assault. Sullivan's voice crackled over the comm. All ships, execute Operation Chimera. The human fleet split into multiple attack groups, each one striking at the Klingons from unexpected vectors. Holographic projectors sprang to life, flooding space with phantom ships that drew Klingon fire. Taurus's Ferengi vessels darted between the lumbering Klingon battle cruisers, their energy weapons slicing through shields and armor. The Klingon vanguard found itself boxed in, hammered from all sides by the coordinated assault. As the tide of battle turned, Sullivan received an urgent transmission. Sir, Klingon strike team detected near the extraction point. They're after Krev and the other defectors. Sullivan's heart made. Prep a shuttle. I'm leading the rescue personally. Minutes later, Sullivan's boots hit dirt as he led a team of Marines onto the colony's surface. The air crackled with weapons fire as they fought their way toward the besieged extraction point. Status report, Sullivan barked into his comm. A panicked voice responded, We're pinned down. Klingon forces have us surrounded. Sullivan assessed their dwindling options. Titan, this is ground team. We need immediate orbital support. Negative, sir. Risk of collateral damage is too high. Sullivan's eyes hardened. That's an order, Titan. Surgical strike, danger close. The sky lit up as the Olympus fleet unleashed its awesome firepower. Precision-guided energy beams lanced down, vaporizing the Klingon attackers while leaving nearby structures untouched. In the aftermath, Sullivan helped Krev to his feet. The Klingon general nodded grimly. You've kept your word, human. Now let us end this war. As news of the failed offensive spread, the Klingon High Command found itself in disarray. Their carefully laid plans had crumbled in the face of human ingenuity and unexpected allies. Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching as the remnants of the Klingon fleet retreated. A message flashed across his console. Klingon High Command sues for peace. Truce negotiations imminent. Sullivan stood at the viewport of the UES Titan, watching as the Olympus fleet took up defensive positions around a resource-rich asteroid belt in the Epsilon Eridani system. The recent victory over the Klingons had bolstered Earth's position, but he knew the real work was just beginning. Admiral Graves reports the first mining outpost is operational, his XO informed him. Sullivan nodded, his eyes fixed on the distant flashes of construction lasers carving into the asteroids. Good. We need those resources if we're going to maintain our edge. A priority comm alert flashed on the nearby console. Sullivan activated it, and Taurus's face appeared on screen. "Sullivan, we have a situation," the Ferengi ambassador said, his voice low. "I've just received word from Raxer. He's uncovered something disturbing." Sullivan leaned in closer. "What is it?" "A secret Ferengi research facility, deep in the Badlands. They're working on some kind of super weapon. If Raxer's intel is accurate, it could destabilize entire star systems." Sullivan's blood ran cold. "We need to act fast. Can you arrange an emergency council session?" Hours later, Sullivan found himself facing a wall of skeptical faces in the Galactic Council chamber. He laid out the threat in no uncertain terms, but was met with resistance at every turn. "We cannot sanction military action based on unverified intelligence," the Andorian representative argued. "The risk of escalation is too great." Sullivan thumped his hand on the podium. "And what about the risk of doing nothing? If this weapon is real—" "Enough!" the council speaker interjected. "This body will not authorize any action at this time. The matter is closed." As the chamber emptied, Sullivan pulled Taurus aside. "We can't let this stand," he whispered. Taurus nodded grimly. "I agree. What do you have in mind?" "Something off the books. I'll need your help, and Krev's." Days later, a cloaked ship slipped through the swirling energies of the Badlands. In its hold, an unlikely strike team prepared for action. Human special forces checked their gear alongside Klingon warriors and Raxer's Ferengi loyalists. Sullivan addressed the assembled force. "This mission is unsanctioned. If we're caught, Earth will disavow all knowledge of our actions. But the stakes are too high to stand idle. You all know the risks. Any who wish to back out, now's the time." Not a soul moved. The asteroid loomed before them, its surface filled with defense turrets. Sullivan gave the signal, and the strike force launched their assault. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the void as the team's shuttles weaved through the facility's outer defenses. They touched down hard on the asteroid's surface, immediately coming under fire from Ferengi security forces. Sullivan ducked behind a rocky outcropping as energy blasts scorched the ground around him. He popped up, squeezing off several shots that dropped 2 Ferengi guards. "Push forward!" he shouted over the din of battle. "We need to reach that main entrance." Krev's Klingons let out war cries as they charged the facility's blast doors, drawing fire away from the infiltration team. Sullivan and Raxer's operatives used the distraction to plant breaching charges. The doors blew inward with a thunderous boom. As smoke billowed out, Sullivan led the charge into the heart of the complex. They fought their way through winding corridors, the air thick with ozone from energy weapon discharges. Finally, they reached the central research lab. What they found chilled Sullivan to his core. A massive antimatter warhead sat on a test platform, pulsing with barely contained energy. "By the blessed exchequer," Raxer breathed. "It's worse than we imagined." Before they could secure the weapon, blast doors slammed shut around them. A maniacal laugh echoed through hidden speakers. "Fools," a voice crowed. "You've walked right into my trap." Sullivan spun around, searching for the source of the voice. "Who are you? Show yourself." A holographic image flickered to life before them. A Ferengi with cybernetic implants covering half his face. "I am Daimon Zek, and you will all bear witness to the dawn of a new era of Ferengi dominance." With a gesture, Zek activated the warhead's countdown sequence. Crimson numerals began ticking down from 5 minutes. "Raxer, can you disable it?" Sullivan shouted. The Ferengi defector's fingers flew across the weapon's control panel. "The encryption is like nothing I've seen. I need more time." Sullivan gritted his teeth. "Time is the one thing we don't have. Krev, with me. We need to find that bastard and get the deactivation codes." They fought their way to the reactor core, where they found Zek and his elite guard waiting. A fierce firefight erupted, energy blasts ricocheting off the walls. Sullivan dove behind a control console, narrowly avoiding a barrage that left scorch marks where his head had been moments before. He popped up, firing rapidly and dropping 2 of Zek's guards. Krev roared as he charged forward, his bat'leth slicing through the air. The Klingon warrior cut down 3 more guards before a lucky shot caught him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. Sullivan saw his opening. He vaulted over his cover and tackled Zek, sending them both crashing to the ground. They grappled fiercely, trading blows as they rolled across the reactor room floor. "Give me the codes!" Sullivan growled, pinning the Ferengi down. Zek sneered. "Never! My weapon will reshape the galaxy!" Sullivan's fist connected with Zek's jaw, dazing the Ferengi long enough for him to snatch the data crystal hanging from his neck. He smashed it into the nearest console, praying it contained the deactivation sequence. The facility rocked with explosions. Sullivan's communicator crackled to life with Taurus's voice. "Sullivan, whatever you're doing in there, do it fast. That weapon's going critical." Sullivan hauled Zek to his feet, shoving him toward the exit. "Move! This whole place is about to blow!" They raced through collapsing corridors, the sound of tearing metal echoing all around them. They reached the extraction point just as Taurus's cloaked ship decloaked before them, its boarding ramp extended. "Go, go, go!" Sullivan shouted, practically throwing his team members aboard. As the last of them piled in, Sullivan turned for one last look at the doomed facility. The asteroid was already coming apart at the seams, great fissures opening across its surface. Taurus's ship rocketed away from the asteroid, pushing its engines to the limit. Behind them, a blinding flash lit up the Badlands as the warhead detonated, obliterating the asteroid and everything on it. In the aftermath, Sullivan stood on the bridge of Taurus's vessel, watching the sensor readings of the destruction they'd narrowly escaped. The realization of how close they'd come to catastrophe burdened immensely upon him. "We may have won this battle," he said quietly, "but the war for galactic stability is just the beginning." Taurus nodded solemnly. "Indeed, my friend, and I fear it will only get more dangerous from here." Sullivan's eyes hardened with conviction. "Then we'd better be ready for whatever comes next." Sullivan paced the confined space of his makeshift war room aboard the UES Titan, his boots echoing on the metal deck. He faced a group of grim-faced leaders, Admiral Graves, Taurus, and Krev. The air hung heavy with tension. "Gentlemen, we've dodged a plasma bolt," Sullivan began, his voice tight. "That antimatter warhead was just the beginning. Earth's newfound strength has painted a target on our backs." Admiral Graves nodded, his weathered face etched with concern. "Our intelligence suggests a shadow syndicate is arming these extremist groups. They're operating across multiple systems, always one step ahead of us." Taurus leaned forward, his lobes twitching. "My sources confirm it. They've even infiltrated Ferengi space, cutting deals with corrupt officials. The profit margins are considerable." Krev smacked his fist on the table. "Cowards! They've wormed their way into Klingon territory as well. Former military engineers, selling their expertise to the highest bidder." Sullivan studied the star chart projected above the table, red markers indicating suspected syndicate activity. "We need to strike hard and fast before they arm another cell with a doomsday weapon, but we're flying blind here." "What we need," Krev growled, "is someone who knows the criminal underworld, someone who can get us inside." All eyes turned to Taurus. The Ferengi ambassador shifted uncomfortably. "I may know someone who fits that description." Hours later, Raxer stood before them, his shrewd eyes taking in the assembled leaders. Sullivan couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. The Ferengi defector had proven his worth, but this mission would push the limits of trust. Raxer's plan was audacious. He and a hand-picked team would go deep undercover, posing as arms dealers to infiltrate the syndicate. Sullivan and Taurus voiced their objections, but Raxer waved them away. "With all due respect," Raxer said, his tone leaving little room for argument, "I've navigated the cesspools of Ferengi commerce for decades. This is what I do." Months crawled by. Sullivan received sporadic updates from Raxer's team as they wormed their way deeper into the syndicate's web. Each transmission left him on edge, wondering if this would be the one where it all went wrong. Finally, a breakthrough. Raxer's team had secured a meeting with Grax, a key player in the syndicate's Badlands operations. The rendezvous point, Freeport, a lawless outpost on the fringes of civilized space. Sullivan watched the covert footage, his fist clenched as he gripped the edge of his console. Raxor sat across from Grax in a dimly lit back room, the air thick with smoke from exotic narcotics. Grax, a hulking Ferengi with a cybernetic eye, leaned back in his chair, openly suspicious. "So," Grax rumbled, "you claim to have the resources to move our more sensitive merchandise." Raxor's face remained impassive. "I don't deal in claims, only results. Name your price, and I'll double it." A flicker of recognition passed over the face of one of Grax's lieutenants. He leaned in, whispering urgently in his boss's ear. Grax's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Raxor. "You've got some nerve showing your face here, traitor," Grax snarled, reaching for a disruptor pistol. In that moment, Raxor's cool demeanor shattered. He leapt to his feet, hands raised. "Wait, I invoke the right of mercantile sanctuary." The words hung in the air. Grax's finger hovered over the trigger, his face contorted with rage. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. "You dare invoke the old ways?" Grax spat. Raxor nodded solemnly. "I do. And I offer you the chance at profit beyond your wildest dreams. Surely that's worth more than petty vengeance." Long seconds ticked by. Finally, Grax holstered his weapon. "Fine, but you'll have to prove your worth. I have a job for you. A test of your abilities and your loyalty." Raxor leaned in, his eyes glittering. "I'm listening." Grax's lips curled into a cruel smile. "There's a Klingon weapons depot, hidden in the heart of the Charybdis Nebula. Inside is a cyber vault containing the access codes to their entire defense network. Bring me that data, and we'll talk business." Sullivan's blood ran cold as he processed the implications. This was their chance to unravel the entire syndicate, but the risk was enormous. He keyed his comm, summoning his most elite operatives. "Suit up," he ordered. "We're going on a heist." The captured Ferengi freighter groaned as it navigated the treacherous expanse of the Kradix Nebula graveyard. Sullivan stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the screen. Twisted hulks of long-dead ships drifted past, their broken forms illuminated by flashes of deadly radiation. "Shields holding at 87%, reported Lieutenant Chen, her fingers dancing across the helm controls. "Another radiation surge incoming." The ship shuddered as the energy wave washed over them. Sullivan steadied himself against a nearby console. "Status?" "Shields down to 82%. We can't take many more hits like that." A tense silence fell over the bridge as a Klingon patrol vessel loomed into view. Sullivan's hand hovered over the weapons controls. "Hold steady," he ordered. "Transmit our cover story." Seconds crawled by as they waited for a response. Finally, a gruff Klingon voice crackled over the comms. "Ferengi vessel, state your purpose in this sector." Sullivan nodded to his communications officer, who activated their prepared audio feed. A pre-recorded Ferengi voice whined, "We seek salvage among the wreckage, as is our right under galactic salvage laws. Our sensors indicate valuable duranium deposits nearby." Another agonizing pause. "Very well," the Klingon growled. "But stray too close to our facility, and we'll vaporize you without warning." As the Klingon ship moved off, Sullivan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Take us in, nice and slow." The freighter crept closer to the massive Klingon weapons depot. Its angular form bristled with defense turrets and sensor arrays. "We're in range," Chen announced. "Transporter room reports ready." Sullivan tapped his communicator. "All teams prepare for insertion. May fortune favor the bold." In the transporter room, Raxor adjusted his stolen Klingon armor one last time. He glanced at his human squad mate, nodding grimly. "Remember, act like you own the place. Klingons respect confidence." The transporter pad hummed to life, and the world dissolved around them in a shimmer of light. They materialized in a dimly lit corridor deep within the Klingon facility. Raxor immediately strode forward, barking orders in fluent Klingon. His human partner fell in step behind him, mimicking the stiff gait of a Klingon warrior. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a Klingon security officer. Raxor didn't miss a beat. "You there! We need access to Security Node 7, now! The Klingon hesitated, his hand drifting towards his disruptor. I don't recognize you. What's your clearance code? Raxor stepped closer, lowering his voice. The code is Graythor, take your mother. Now stand aside before I report your incompetence to the facility commander. The guard's eyes widened and he quickly stepped aside. My apologies, sir. Right this way. As they moved deeper into the complex, Sullivan's voice crackled in their earpieces. Team 2 in position, proceeding to Cybervault. Raxor and his partner reached a heavily fortified door. A complex biometric scanner guarded the entrance. Raxor pulled out a Ferengi device and attached it to the scanner. The machine hummed, cycling through thousands of genetic patterns in seconds. The door hissed open. They stepped inside, finding themselves in a cavernous room filled with rows of blinking server banks. At the center stood a pillar of light, the cyber vault containing the Klingon defense codes. Raxor's partner pulled out a data extraction device and got to work. As the download began, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. We've been made, Raxor shouted. He drew his disruptor, taking up a defensive position. The door exploded inward. Klingon warriors poured through the opening, disruptor fire filling the air. Raxor and his partner dove for cover, returning fire as best they could. Sullivan! Raxor yelled into his comm. We need an exit! Aboard the cloaked human warship, Sullivan sprang into action. Taurus, light 'em up! The warship decloaked, its massive disruptor cannons unleashing hellfire upon the Klingon facility's outer defenses. Explosions rocked the complex as Sullivan led a heavily armed team to extract their trapped operatives. They fought their way through corridors choked with smoke and wounded Klingons. Sullivan's rifle spat death as he cleared a path to the cyber vault. Raxor, he shouted over the din of battle. We're coming in hot. The two teams linked up just as the data download completed. Sullivan grabbed the precious intel and shouted, Move! Back to the extraction point! They ran, laying down suppressive fire as Klingon reinforcements swarmed after them. They reached a gaping hole in the facility's hull, created by Taurus's bombardment. Jump! Sullivan ordered. One by one, they leapt into the void. Gravitic tethers snapped taut, yanking them towards the waiting human ship. As the last operative was pulled aboard, Taurus opened a warp portal, and they vanished into the swirling energies of faster-than-light travel. Hours later, battered but alive, Sullivan's team rendezvoused with Raxor at the predetermined coordinates. The Ferengi defector, now back in his usual attire, accepted the stolen data with a wolfish grin. Excellent work, he said. Grax will be most pleased. Sullivan nodded grimly. Let's hope it's enough to get us inside that Husnak warworld. We need to end this, once and for all. Raxor's communicator chirped. He answered, listening intently before turning back to Sullivan with a look of triumph. It's done. Grax wants to meet at the Syndicate's stronghold. Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. Then let's not keep him waiting. The Husnak warworld's cavernous corridors echoed with the heavy footfalls of Grax's security forces. Raxor pressed himself against a bulkhead, his breath catching in his throat as a patrol thundered past. The Ferengi's eyes darted to his wrist computer, decoding the latest intercepted transmission. Shit, he hissed, fingers flying across the device. Sullivan, you idiot. Alarms blared, red emergency lights bathing the hallway in an eerie glow. Raxor's earpiece crackled to life. Boss, we've been made, a voice whispered urgently. They're rounding up the team for interrogation. Raxor's mind raced. He tapped a complex series of commands into his wrist computer, activating dormant subroutines planted throughout the warworld systems. Initiate Protocol Omega, he ordered, and may the great river have mercy on us all. Across the massive station, chaos erupted. Life support systems failed in entire sectors. Gravity plating reversed polarity, sending unsuspecting crew members hurtling towards ceilings. Airlocks cycled open without warning, venting atmosphere and unfortunate bystanders into the void of space. Raxor sprinted through the pandemonium, dodging panicked crew members and malfunctioning machinery. He skidded to a halt before a heavily fortified door, the words, detention block, etched in harsh Husnak script above it. His fingers danced across the security panel, bypassing firewalls and overriding lockdown protocols. The door hissed open, revealing a row of force field-protected cells. Inside, Sullivan's captured team looked up in surprise. "About damn time," one of the Marines growled as Raxer deactivated the force fields. "What's the situation?" Raxer tossed the man a disruptor. "Bad and getting worse. We need to move. Now." The ragtag group fought their way through the warworld's twisting corridors, dispatching confused security forces with practiced efficiency. They reached a junction, and Raxer pointed towards a massive set of blast doors. "The command nexus," he explained. "If we can shut down the jamming array, we might have a chance." Sullivan nodded grimly. "Let's do it." They surged forward, only to be met by a wall of weapons fire. Sindarin cyborg enforcers, their augmented bodies gleaming with lethal implants, poured from side passages. "Cover me!" Raxer shouted, diving for a nearby computer terminal. His fingers flew across the keys as Sullivan and his Marines engaged in a brutal firefight. A cyborg lunged at Sullivan, its arm morphing into a vicious blade. The human ducked, feeling the whoosh of air as the weapon passed inches from his face. He fired point blank into the creature's chest, watching it crumple to the deck. "Raxer!" Sullivan yelled over the din of battle. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster!" The Ferengi's eyes never left the screen. "Almost there." The blast doors suddenly slid open. Sullivan's team poured into the command nexus, securing the room with practiced efficiency. Raxer made a beeline for the central control station, fingers already dancing across its surface. "I'm in," he announced. "Give me 2 minutes to crack these firewalls and we'll have control of the jamming array." Sullivan nodded, organizing his Marines into a defensive perimeter. The sounds of approaching security forces echoed from the corridor outside. "Make it quick," Sullivan ordered. "We're about to have company." Raxer worked feverishly, sweat beading on his brow as he navigated the complex web of Husnak security protocols. A triumphant grin spread across his face as the final firewall crumbled. "I've got it," he shouted. "The jamming field is—" His words were cut off by a deafening klaxon. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the twisted face of Grax. "You think you've won?" the Husnak leader snarled. "Then watch as I reduce your precious Ferengi worlds to ash." Horror dawned on Raxer's face as he registered the new data scrolling across his console. "He's activated the Doomsday protocols," he whispered. "We have minutes before this entire station rams into a Ferengi colony." Sullivan's mind focused. "Can you stop it?" Raxer's fingers flew across the controls, his expression growing increasingly desperate. "There's no time," he muttered. "Unless—" His eyes lit up with a dangerous glint. "I can overload the jamming array," he explained. "Create a subspace pulse strong enough to disrupt the warworld's engines. It's a long shot, but—" "Do it," Sullivan ordered. Raxer nodded, initiating the high-stakes endeavor. The command nexus hummed with building energy as the jamming array pushed far beyond its design limits. "Brace yourselves," Raxer shouted. A blinding flash erupted from the central console. The deck lurched violently beneath their feet as the subspace pulse rippled through the massive station. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a bone-rattling groan, the warworld's engines sputtered and died. The view screen showed the massive fortress drifting harmlessly off course, missing the Ferengi colony by parsecs. Sullivan allowed himself a moment of relief before snapping back to the reality of their situation. "We're not done yet," he growled. "Let's finish this." A proximity alert blared, and the view screen filled with the welcome sight of Taurus and Krev's combined fleet dropping out of warp. The battle for the Husnak warworld had only just begun. Sullivan's demolition team raced through the Husnak warworld's twisting corridors, their boots pounding on metal grates. Acrid smoke filled the air, stinging their eyes and burning their lungs. Raxer's voice crackled over the comm, guiding them through the labyrinth of irradiated reactor decks. Left at the next junction, the Ferengi instructed. Watch for hostiles. As if on cue, disruptor fire erupted from an adjoining passageway. Sullivan dove for cover behind a bulkhead, bits of superheated metal pinging off his armor. He peeked around the corner, spotting a group of fanatical syndicate holdouts barricaded behind makeshift defenses. "Chen, suppressing fire," Sullivan barked. "Martinez, flank left!" The team moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons spitting death as they advanced. Chen's heavy repeater pinned down the defenders while Martinez circled wide, catching them in a deadly crossfire. Within moments, the passage fell silent. "Clear," Martinez called out. Sullivan nodded grimly. "Move out. We're running out of time." They pressed on, fighting through pockets of resistance. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet as Taurus's ships traded vicious broadsides with the Warworld's remaining batteries. Finally, they reached their objective, a massive bulkhead protecting the warhead's containment silo. "This is it," Sullivan announced, his voice tight with tension. "Plant the charges." His team worked swiftly, attaching resonance explosives to key structural points. Sullivan's fingers flew across the detonator's keypad, inputting the final sequence. "Fire in the hole!" The charges erupted in a thunderous cacophony, tearing open a jagged passage to the warhead's core. As the dust settled, Sullivan led the way into the breach. Inside, they found a cavernous chamber dominated by the sleek, menacing form of the Klingon antimatter device. "Begin upload of the overload sequence," Sullivan ordered, his eyes scanning for threats. A technician rushed to the main console, fingers dancing across the controls. Suddenly, a stray disruptor bolt lanced out from the shadows, striking the console in a shower of sparks. The tech stumbled back, clutching a burned hand. "Damn it!" Sullivan snarled. "Status report!" The tech's face was ashen. "Sir, the detonation codes are corrupted. We can't trigger the overload remotely." A heavy silence fell over the team as the implications sank in. Someone would have to manually interface with the warhead. A one-way trip. Raxor stepped forward, his expression resolute. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "My crew swore a debt of honor to you, Sullivan. It's time to pay up." Sullivan opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Raxor's eyes silenced him. The Ferengi was already donning an environmental suit, preparing to enter the silo. "For once," Raxor said with a wry smile, "a Ferengi will perform the biggest profit loss of all." As the team retreated to a safe distance, Raxor entered the silo. The warhead's core pulsed with otherworldly energy, bathing him in an eerie glow. With steady hands, he bypassed failsafe after failsafe, initiating the fatal overload sequence. As power levels climbed to critical, Raxor keyed his comm one last time. "Sullivan, Taurus, tell my people I died without profit and with honor." The explosion that followed defied description. The Warworld's reactor core ruptured, triggering a cascading antimatter implosion. In an instant, the massive station was consumed by an apocalyptic blast that outshone the stars themselves. The shockwave slammed into the Ferengi human fleet with devastating force. On Taurus's bridge, consoles exploded in showers of sparks as the crew struggled to maintain control. The human captain's eyes widened in awe and horror at the spectacle unfolding before him. "By the caller's hand," Taurus breathed, "what a Ferengi's profit." As the inferno slowly dissipated, Sullivan staggered to the viewport, his face etched with shock and grief. The price of victory lay strewn across the battlefield, shattered hulls, drifting lifeboats, and the smoldering bones of the once mighty warworld. A flashing alert drew Sullivan's attention to a lone Starfarer-class cruiser adrift at the edge of the debris field. His heart sank as he recognized Krev's flagship, now a powerless husk with its warp core ejected. "Get me a comm link to that ship," Sullivan barked, desperation creeping into his voice. But only static answered his hails. Then, crackling through the interference, came Krev's final message. "We chose a warrior's trade. For glory. Our souls are already with the Slayers." Sullivan watched helplessly as the cruiser's hull buckled and split. For a brief moment, Green thrusters flared defiantly against the void, then winked out forever. Krev and his brothers-in-arms were gone, claimed by the unforgiving vacuum of space. An eerie quiet settled over Taurus's battered bridge, broken only by the insistent beeping of sensor alerts. Sullivan's blood ran cold as he processed the new data, multiple warp signatures incoming, closing fast. "Ferengi marauders," Taurus growled, "and Klingon honor squadrons. They're coming to pick the bones clean." Sullivan met Taurus's gaze, a grim understanding passing between them. Their once proud fleet hung in tatters, easy prey for the vultures circling their position. There was only one option left. "Scuttle the crippled ships," Sullivan ordered, his voice hollow. "We can't let our tech fall into their hands." As the last of their damaged vessels succumbed to carefully planned overloads, Taurus input a final set of coordinates into his warp drive. His expression was unreadable as he turned to Sullivan. "One forgotten refuge remains," the human captain said quietly. "We can regroup there and rebuild, but it's no longer the sanctuary it once was." Sullivan studied the course projection, recognizing the unassuming star system. Galdura 4, once a secret human fleet redoubt, now little more than a haunted ruin. As the battered survivors of humanity's great gambit limped towards their uncertain future, Sullivan couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were a long way to go. The stars stretched into lines as they made the jump to warp, leaving behind the ashes of their hard-won victory. Humanity had come of age in fire and blood, and the road ahead promised only more hardship as their tenuous foothold among the stars hung in the balance.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.